So how do we break a reality? So I said that 1983 broke reality. Now, again, this is not metaphorical. This is a very real and tangible process. So let's look at the first part of it, okay? That all this technology that has come to define our lives today first popped into the world in 1983, all right? TCP/IP, Transmission Control Protocol, aka the Internet. The Internet, okay? TCP/IP enabled a interconnected network of networks and is the foundational technology of the Internet. In 1983, TCP/IP replaced NCP as the underlying packet switching technology of ARPANET. ARPA, okay, Advanced Research, which is connected to DARPA, which is basically the military. So the ARPANET, the internet started off as a military project. TCP/IP is a reliable and connection-oriented protocol used for establishing a connection between two devices over a network. It guarantees the delivery of data packets in the right order without any data loss. Okay, so the internet, my people, what could possibly be more foundational as far as the 21st century is concerned, right? So this is an old ARPANET logic map, all right? And you can just see these are all packets and so on, and those little dots there are the switches. This was very crude, very preliminary, and obviously used with predominantly dial-up. I'm not even sure that there was anything like optical or wired internet. Probably just in the military, probably just in colleges and so on. So this is the ARPANET, very, very crude, right? Here's the ARPANET here. This is from an old circular, all right? So again, this is all being done on mainframes. This is all being done ASCII, right? This is all being done with text, not using graphical user interfaces and so on. This is very crude, but people were doing things. I mean, this is how things really started, right? So here we go, 1960s. Single cable can carry a few thousand bits per second. Late 70s, Defense Data Network develops TCP/IP networking protocol for ARPANET, all right? In the intervening years, other prototypes are developed. And then in 1983, the prototypes became operational. So the migration from ARPANET to TCP/IP as standard network protocol. So what could possibly be more significant than the internet in this day and age? Absolutely nothing. So again, went live 1983. The switch from ARPANET, which was very crude and clunky, to the internet as we know it today, all right? The cell phone. Yes, the cell phone. Motorola released the first consumer available cell phone, the Motorola Dynatac, 1983. You see those things, man. Those things were the size of bricks. Bricks with antennas, okay? Huge. But made their first sale in 1983. Obviously, technology they've been working on for some time, but it hadn't gone public. All right. Here are a couple ads. Look at that. $4,000. $4,000 for the Dynatac, which had no smart features. You didn't have smartphones until several years later. I think early 90s maybe. Anyway, Motorola announces the world's first portable cellular phone. All right, the Dynatac, $4,000. But what an incredible shift! All of a sudden, you are tethered to the phone. The phone isn't tethered to the wall. You are tethered to the phone. A complete change in our relationship to technology. Forbidden fruit. Okay, so it doesn't get more it doesn't get more world changing, more revolutionary than the internet and cell phones. I mean, we could just stop this entire thing right here, right? Yeah, 1983, internet and cell phones. Everything changed, mostly for the worst. Apple II. So this was state of the art for personal computing at the beginning of 1983. The Apple II, all right? The second version of the Apple I, obviously, which came out, I believe, in 1976. So this was state of the art, and again, it was probably about $4,000 or $5,000 as well. And then this happened early 1983, late January of 1983. The Lisa. Most people haven't even heard of this computer. All right, this is the first graphic user interface computer that was commercially available. All right. This is the start of Mac. This is the start of Android. This is the start of Windows. Okay. This technology came from Xerox PARC. They were developing this in the 60s, believe it or not, but it didn't hit the market until 1983. And look at those floppy drives for the 5-inch floppy disks, the real floppy disks, not the 3.5-inch ones that they called floppies, weren't actually floppies. And here is the desktop, the Apple Lisa. They have emulators that you can download if you want to get the experience, okay? Now, this makes me very wistful. And I'll just tell you a story after we see this next slide. So again, this is very crude and primitive and early, but we see the same, the same arrangement for the most part on this computer that I'm working on now. This is the birth of it. We see the wastebasket, we see the menus, we see the pop-up windows. I believe that there was drag and drop. This is also a drawing program, okay? So 1983, this is when this stuff is starting to seep in, all right? Again, we could just stop it here. The internet, cell phones, graphical interface, user interface. What is more definitional of this time in our history than those three things, right? Here's another. It's just shocking to me. My first computer was a color computer. It was a 2CI. I got it in 1990 or 91, and that same font, that same Chicago font that Apple had used up until System 10, I believe. I think it was. But that font, for the menus and so on, very iconic font, very recognizable. The font is called Chicago, and it was Apple's trademark font. Now, interestingly enough, in 1983, I had gone for an interview at the New England School of Art and Design, and I was not impressed with the school, but I did sit behind a computer for the first time that I can remember, and was messing around with a graphics program. And I don't think it was a Mac. It might have been. I don't even remember. It was so long ago. But 1983, maybe October or November. And one of the reasons why I applied there is that they actually had a comic book course, and I sat in on it, and it was a joke. And the teacher, honest to God, so I'm 17 years old, 17, yeah. And I'm applying to this school, and I sit down in this class, and the teacher goes, "Oh, class, we have this guest here. He's very knowledgeable of comics. He's going to, address the class." And the guy left. The teacher just left, and I'm sitting there with like a bunch of people at least 3 or 4 years older than me. Like, they're all staring at me like, who is this kid and why is he here? It was very embarrassing. But anyway, that was the first time I used a graphics program on a computer. It was very, very interesting. 1983. All right. In October, the Macintosh, 128K, my God. CPU, 400 kilobytes. 9-inch display. Oh man. Floppy disk drive. Wow. So, and look at the price. This computer costs twice as much as the computer I'm on now. And the computer I'm on now is maybe about 1 trillion times more powerful. But this is a game changer because what we have with Macintosh is that Bill Gates goes, oh, I like that idea, and creates Windows or orders the creation of Windows. And then again, years later, Android. So most people, actually myself included, would not be using computers if it weren't for graphical user interface. All right. This could not be more revolutionary. This was a revolution in computing. All right. Graphical user interface. So again, another major innovation that came to us in 1983. And there's an ad for the Macintosh. This thing got a lot of attention. There was a big Super Bowl ad that some of you might remember. All right. So there we go. That is the Macintosh 1. All right. And it was a big deal. And, compared to the older PCs, the IBM-based PCs and so on, it was very spiffy. But Microsoft released their first version of Microsoft Word. It was released under a different name, but this became the standard for PC, both on a PC platform, but also Macintosh. So Microsoft Word became the standard for word processing in 1983. So, I mean, it's just amazing to just sit back and see all these world-changing technologies hit the market this year. Lotus 123 was the first killer app, okay? It was for the PC, for DOS, right? But it was a huge hit. $5.5 billion IPO in 1983. Main reason to buy an IBM PC, its popularity made it the second biggest software company in 1983. And what happened to them, right? Now look at that screen. See, this is what I'm talking about. And you look at the graphical user interface, but most of the computers at that time still look like that. I mean, up until the late 80s, at least, until Microsoft got their act together with Windows. So anyway, two huge, absolutely earth-shaking, world-changing software programs are also released this year. The first 3D printer was created by Chuck Hull in 1983. Okay, it was a patent. I don't believe that there was at least something that was ready to market. And there were other people that were working on 3D printers. But 1983, yet again, all right, 1983, 3D printing. And there's Chuck Hull there, and there is his setup, all right? The first operational 3D printer, okay, 1983. Long march towards artificial intelligence. There was actually, after 1983, things really slowed down for a few years. There was a bit of skepticism about the viability of AI, which we're hearing again now, interestingly enough. Anybody who's worked with AI knows the hallucination issue is a major issue, and it gets things wrong all the time. Doesn't matter what they call LLMs, large language models. Anyway, systems like Mycin and Dendrel. Japan launched an ambitious initiative to develop an AI-driven computer, emphasizing logic programming. Lisp machines commercialized Lisp-based hardware tailored for AI development, though they were niche and expensive. But the point is that there were a number of major breakthroughs in 1983 before the whole field kind of collapsed for a number of years shortly after. MIDI, okay? MIDI. Well, as somebody who is a bit long in the tooth and remembers the world before all these technologies, it's just blowing my mind how they all came out the same year. It's almost inconceivable to me. But as we will see, that's the least of the excitement in 1983. That's the least of the breakthroughs in some ways. This is MIDI. So MIDI is it's basically a protocol that allows musical computers to speak to each other regardless of the manufacturer. All right. So it used to be, if you bought a Roland keyboard and a Lindrum drum machine, and maybe another company's maybe ARP or something had like an arpeggiator or a sequencer, you had to play them separately and record them separately. And what MIDI allowed you to do was to play everything together, was to network everything together. And this, believe me, revolutionized music and is still revolutionizing music for better or worse. All right. So I'll just try and breeze through this a bit. MIDI, musical instrument digital interface, was created through a collaboration between companies like Sequential Circuits and Roland in 1983 to allow electronic instruments from different manufacturers to communicate with each other. The system was a revolutionary open source technology that allowed instruments to send musical performance data like note information and velocity. Before MIDI, there was no universal way for different manufacturers' synthesizers to connect and communicate. It enabled more complex and streamlined music production, as musicians could now control multiple synthesizers from a single master keyboard or use computers to sequence and edit their music, which they did starting immediately. Okay, as soon as MIDI hit the market, everyone was using it. And by 1985, 1986, every record you heard on the charts had MIDI somewhere in it. MIDI was being used for everything, all right? And this is just a graphic showing, we've got a laptop here, and then we've got all these different instruments here that can all be centralized in a network through MIDI, all right? So this basically means, when you have people like Trent Reznor, all right, who make their records themselves, Prince, all right? Once they had MIDI, they didn't need anyone else. If they could play keyboards, if they could program a drum machine, if they could do anything, they no longer needed musicians. And this completely changed the music business, because before MIDI, you had a lot of people who were making good money as studio musicians. And that eventually dried up thanks to MIDI. So another revolutionary technology. The first live action CGI composite with real world background. Now, what does this entail? Why is this such a big deal? So this is a film called Nightmares, also 1983. The film's third segment, The Bishop of Battle, starring Emilio Estevez as a teen addicted to a killer video game, features approximately 4.5 minutes of computer-generated imagery. Pretty impressive for 1983. Unlike Tron, which composited live action onto fully CGI backgrounds, Nightmares achieved the first seamless blend of CGI elements with live actors and a real filmed environment. CGI, MIDI, internet, cell phones, Microsoft, Lotus, Macintosh, all in 1 year, all right? And honestly, mostly in the first half of the year, which is just absolutely mind-boggling. This technique pushed the boundaries of visual effects by making digital animations feel more grounded in physical space, influencing future hybrid effects work in films like The Last Starfighter the following year, but of course also every other movie thereafter, all right? Even movies you wouldn't expect. use CGI. And this is just a screenshot here. So, I mean, obviously very limited, very primitive, all right? We've got these wireframes here. And there's Emilio, just before he starred in Repo Man. But still, what could have changed cinema, and in my estimation, for the worse than CGI, all right? So, this is just we just started here. We just got this party started here, right? So when I talk about reality being broken, what do I mean by that? So the first blows against the real. The internet broke the physical reality of information. You no longer had books and newspapers and magazines as the gold standard of disseminating information. You had the internet, which anybody can change, anybody can alter. It happens all the time, every single day. Reality is being rewritten constantly, all right? Because of the internet, took away the physical reality of information. And quite frankly, I would say it inured people to the power of information. You make information cheap, but you also cheapen information. The cell phone would tether humanity to the internet no matter where they were. Again, this is obviously 17, 18 years later, right, when smartphones became popular. But now all of us are tethered to the internet all the time, every day, all day, all right? So we are tethered to this unreality generator, okay? 3D printing broke the physical reality of product manufacturing. Okay, so you can make, and I see this, I watch a lot of these restoration videos. And when, if somebody's fixing some old piece of furniture or some old toy and they don't have the parts, they just look them up online, create the templates, and 3D print them. It's actually kind of astonishing to think about, It hasn't taken off quite the way it was predicted to, that everyone would have 3D printers and have cottage industries, but it's still there and it's still changing the reality of product manufacturing. MIDI broke the physical reality of music. So you hear a piece of music. Before MIDI, you had synthesizers and drum machines, of course, but they were being played separately and recorded separately. And what we have now is that you can hear a piece of music, and now there's AI, and you don't even know whether it's being generated by a human being at all. But the physical reality of like people sitting down and playing musical instruments, drums, bass, piano, saxophone, they could all be reproduced. They could all be counterfeited, let's just say, with MIDI. And again, this happened immediately. You would have no idea how many records, even in 1984, were all using MIDI. And again, any chart music that you heard had MIDI somewhere. All right. It just completely changed the physical reality of music. CGI broke the physical reality of motion pictures. What are you looking at? You see these incredible tableaus, and they're all digital. They're all CGI. I mean, just think about the Lord of the Rings films. Think about the Marvel films. I mean, think about all these Star Wars films, all right? You're no longer looking at physical objects, miniatures, models, live action kind of animatronics. It's all fake. And AI broke the physical reality of intelligence. You don't need people to think anymore, even with all the mistakes and hallucinations. So this is 1983, okay? The internet, the cell phone, 3D printing, MIDI, CGI, AI, all right? They all destroyed what we think of as being real. Now, the effects of this took a while to sink in, but by the end of the 90s, you heard a lot of people talking about how nobody knows what's real anymore. I remember the book Rising Sun by Michael Crichton talking about Photoshop. Before Photoshop, I mean, I was working on Photoshop, so I knew what it was, but most people did not. And it was talking about how National Geographic had moved the pyramids to be closer to the Sphinx in a photo. So all of a sudden, photos aren't real. We can't trust photos. We can't trust any information anymore. And it's of course it's only gotten worse. But the seeds for this were all planted in 1983. So reality, as we understand it, was tangibly broken. All right, which